something I've said in regards to my childhood makes me feel like I haven't explained things properly because, yeah, I just want to just clarify. Like, when I was younger, I used to think England was a really nice place, and I guess that was because I was brought up in Hampstead and then moved to Oxford, which was just a very very nice area. I was walking around the houses. There was a tennis court that we used to go to, and I remember walking through the houses, and I remember just thinking that these were just normal, standard, boring like houses. And I walked around that same area 2 weeks ago, and I was just like, wow, these houses are like magnificent. They're amazing, and that it just looks like Hampstead. And I guess that would be the reason why I saw back then these houses were just like normal houses, because I was from Hampstead. There's a lot of nice areas. My dad liked to go to lots of different places around England, but we usually went for nice villages, or, if you live in a really nice area and then start visiting other areas that not quite as nice, but still have tendencies to be nice, like the nice houses and stuff like that, you start just picking up on all the nice things, and you think you're, so even though but I've also stated that I was very depressed when I was a child. Now, I was very depressed when I was a child, but that's because I used to do the whole time traveling, or believe in my head, what the past was like. I was very interested in time travel, and the belief that I might be able to be a god or be a time traveler. I don't know where these thoughts come, or why I've had them, but I've always had them. Um, I loved magic and things like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and even Alex Max and Charmed, and so I was always very, and Rainbow Bright, and just all the characters that have kind of like magic and stuff like that. And I guess I used to always think, obviously there's a lot of problems in this world, and I used to look on the news. Like, I can't remember really what was on the news, but there was always problems in the Middle East, and my dad, with my parents, we always went on holiday to different parts. I think we went to Italy 3 times, and France many times, and then we went to, a lot of places in Europe were nice, but I think I was always aware that something was bad, something really was bad in the world. And I think that was because when you look at the map, yes, you have Europe, that was a very nice area, and America, we went to America a few times, and both of them seemed quite nice. I think I also went to Niagara Falls, but I don't remember that at all. I was too young to remember that. And I went to Hawaii 3 times, and I went to Australia a couple of times, and so I was very well travelled. But I was aware that so even though I had quite a nice upbringing, one might say, well, if you've only seen nice areas and lived in a nice area, then how could you hate your life? How could you be suicidal from a very young age? And I guess because that kind of is a contradiction. It's a contradiction to say, oh, I used to love England, and because I didn't really used to love England, but I used to love England because I was always aware of the poverty that existed in Africa, and in bad parts of the world, warring parts of, or just Islamic areas as well. But I never really focused too much on the Islamic areas because I never liked the veils. I never understood the veils. I was never a fan of the veils or female oppression. So I kind of, in a way, when I'd see Islamic people in poverty, in a way I would kind of feel like, well, that's your fault for treating women like crap. I've always had that belief, actually. I've always had the belief that Islamic countries look like shit, because that's what we always see on the news. Every time you see an Islamic country with people wearing these veils, you kind of just think that looks like shit. But I hate the veils. I've always hated the veils. I like to cover, so I'm contradicting myself again on that. When I was up to the age of 13 or something, I used to always wear t-shirts, and I don't know, I had this weird thing where I wanted to cover my shoulders because I didn't like the shape of my breasts. I didn't want to be too sexual and stuff, so I did go through that phase, but I never understood the whole covering of hair. I never understood the sort of Teletubby kind of look, and when I would see areas, Islamic areas specifically, I wouldn't care because I didn't agree with their religion, and a part of me always believed that maybe God felt the same way, and that's why Islamic countries looked like shit. Like, I've never seen Saudi Arabia, and I've heard Saudi Arabia actually looks very nice, and Turkey, I'm sure there's parts of Turkey that look nice, and I'm sure Dubai is a very nice area, but I've never really seen anything. There's so many different places in the world, and therefore, if I say I hate Islamic countries because I don't like their religion, I'm aware that there might be some Islamic countries, or some. There was another one that's supposed to be like 50-50 Islamic and Christian that works quite well, but I can't remember which one that one is. But you know, I I don't know, because I didn't. There's a lot of places around the world that I'm not aware of, but I was aware of. But Africa is different because there are a lot of Christians in Africa. There are a lot of Christians in Nigeria. There are a lot of Christians that don't wear veils. Although there's a lot of Christians that do wear veils as well. But how I've kind of seen it is I've taken more pity for people that don't wear veils and living in poverty. But yeah, when I see people living in poverty and covering their hair and stuff, I've never been like too sad about it. In fact, I think in a way, because I hate it, a part of me have always wondered that if there is a God, maybe the reason why these people live in this way, is because of that. And yeah, I've noticed that there's a huge number of people in England wearing veils and getting to live in a nice house and having a nice life and I think as my life has fallen apart more and more, and I'm just getting more and more angry at how I don't feel helped, and yet these people are being helped and not me. This is building up anger in me, anger in probably in the whole. I don't know, but I just want to kind of clarify that I was very depressed as a child, even though I believed that England was a nice place. On one hand, I believed England was a nice place because it was so much better than a lot of. Sometimes if you're not happy, you like to look at situations or countries that are worse than yours, and you think, well, I can be happy, or I can find some sort of satisfaction in knowing that my country is not as bad as that country. My country has better laws. Our policemen are good. Like, that's what I believed when I was younger, that our policemen were good, that people were fairly nice and civilized here. I didn't really know much about Islamic communities at all until, I don't know. I mean, I guess because of doing massage, I've been more and more aware of foreigners, because, all the ones that think that I'm a prostitute will call up saying, "Do you offer sex?" Or they don't talk in an English way. They talk like they don't understand much English, hence they talk in kind of one words and stuff, There's loads, and I've actually forgotten the number of phone calls that I've had, but I could do quite a good imitation of a phone caller but it's been quite a long time now since I've had these phone calls, so I've kind of blanked most of them out. But I'm aware that England has become more and more foreign because of the job that I was doing, and just constant, like, majority of the clients that I would see would be foreigners, wouldn't speak English very well. The majority not necessarily wouldn't speak English very well, actually. The people who came spoke English, but the majority of people who called on the phone, so for every client that I have, there would be like 5 or 6 people calling asking for sex, assuming that massage and prostitution is the same thing. So I would get a lot of those calls. So I was aware that England was being full of foreigners, but it was London. I accepted that London was a very multicultural country, and I kind of assumed that everywhere else in England wasn't like that. And I was very wrong. The Islamic communities in all over England is just getting bigger. I think it's starting off in the cities, Birmingham, Manchester, London, but it's going to start spreading. If you go to little villages and stuff, you don't see that many Islamic people. I think that's because the cities are actually cheaper to live in, because there's more houses, there's smaller houses, but there's more tower blocks and stuff. which keeps the housing low, and if people are coming from other countries, they probably don't have huge amounts, and they probably want to live in areas where there's other Islamic people and stuff. So, but yeah, there are a lot of people that think there aren't an invasion going on, and I think it might be because they're living in an area that's not being invaded, and there are patches. England is very patchy, but these patches are definitely growing. And Islam is becoming more of a problem, and I keep posting about it on my Facebook page, and I keep trying to not, because I don't want to just post the same things over and over and over again, but I feel like I have to, because I'm not sure how many people are agreeing with me, And if I am going to be making war against Islam, I guess I need to show all the things that I'm seeing that give you a better understanding of why I feel the way that I do. And technically, I have felt this way against Islam my whole life. Ever since the beginning, I don't like the veils. I don't like how they look. I don't like a lot of things. They don't have a good energy. I like people with a positive energy. I like cheerleaders. I like people who have nice, bright, shiny hair and who look attractive. And yes, Islamic people can look attractive if they take off those stupid veils and start dressing more like a moderner or a Westerner, and start looking more, like they care about their appearance and stuff. The problem is there's a lot of people who can care about their appearance and can look much better and can look like anyone else, and yet they can still hold the values and principles of Islam. And this is going to be making it harder and harder to tell the difference. Likewise, there are many Christians who hold very strong biblical beliefs, even though they look very modern and futuristic. So it's I kind of wanted to say, when I was a child, I was very, very depressed. But I think the main reason why I was depressed is because I kept wanting to know what the past was like and trying to work out what my past life was like. And I could never quite work out what my past life was like, but I think thinking about what my past life was like, that was always very depressing, because when I was like looking at all the different ages, like trying to work out, was I a Victorian, was I this, was I, I was very, I've always believed in past lives, and I always believed the reason why I'm not like my parents is because I've had many past lives, and I was trying to work out like why or what or how, and just the idea that I could have been alive in the past is horrifically bad, because terrible things happened in the past. Right now there are huge amounts of slaughtering. There's a huge amount of slaughter going on inside Nigeria and stuff. Now, if countries can help these people, but we can't, because countries are dying because of all the overpopulation and over immigrants. And if the only way to help these people is to allow them to immigrate into our country, well, that is just going to lower the standard of our own country. And I think it's, we need to start separating modern people with old people, and stop helping the unevolved people. But yeah, there is loads in the middle that are very good. You can teach them Western ways, teach them Western values, but in the back of their mind they might just be thinking, right, this is how I have to pass for a Westerner, but really I'm going to be staying loyal to the country that I came from, or to the God that I used to serve. There are a lot of people who are learning how to be a Westerner, but they're not agreeing with how that being a Westerner is better. They're still believing with their old ways. So there is a definite divide between this group. And but yeah, I used to be depressed a lot when I was a child, but I think it was because of the sort of feeling like I'm in hell, like Earth is just hell. And even though I'm not in hell, because Oxford and Hampstead were a very nice place, I've always had a sort of wanted to know about the past and on what's going on. And I didn't even study history. I had a choice between history or music, and I chose music. So I didn't actually study history, but I liked history through art, because I felt like you got a real view of it. You got to actually, I didn't want school to destroy my keenness to want to know about history. And I didn't want to be brainwashed by books that I don't think necessarily are the truth, because I think there's a lot of people who can teach history, but you can teach it in the same way you teach religion. You can change everything, and you can just make up what you think was the truth when really it might have not been the truth. And just because there are lots of images of medieval torture methods, that doesn't actually mean that these methods were carried out, because part of these drawings could actually have been used to just scare people. Don't steal because we're going to do this to you, and yes, we do this to you, we've done this to this person. In reality, it might all be just rubbish, and you're just putting things on paper to scare the public so that they don't do crimes. I know that could have been a possibility. So just because something's written on a piece of paper, that doesn't mean that it's truth. That doesn't mean that it is the truth. But I'm guessing our past was very similar to what's going on in Nigeria now. And yes, whatever the sort of torture methods that they do back then, I would say that what was that thing? Pulling out the shoulders and then tying your hands behind your back and then just letting you dangle with. That sounds absolutely. That sounds like something that's not believable. But I saw a clip the other day of that literally happening, and I saw another clip of a cat grabbing a live mouse in its mouth and then dropping it into a soup, dropping it into a boiling hot soup. I guess someone was filming. I don't know why they were filming their kitchen being. Maybe they had security cameras in their kitchen, and they were just cooking a soup. And they probably went to come and eat the soup and found a live mouse in there. And they went to go and find out how that mouse got in there. Did it climb in there? And it turned out that the cat had literally just put a live mouse. That would have been an absolute horrible, horrific death for that mouse, and I felt very sorry for it. But all these things happen, and they happen for a long time, and there would have been no savior for all the people that have gone through these sort of savage deaths 1,000 years ago, 200, 300, 400 years ago, 500 years ago. There would have been no rescue because there would have been no modern people. But we can't use the fact that modern people with better technologies exist. We can't use this as a fact that we need to help them, because the fact of the matter is there is too many people here. And yeah, I think maybe that's the reason why people are not reporting on the Christians being killed in Nigeria, because technically, if we tried to help them, the only way we could try and help them would be to invite them into our country. And people might start arguing, if Gazans are Islamic, Israel doesn't want them because it's a different religion, and they're going to start, wanting to turn against them. So why isn't Egypt taking them in? Why isn't Jordan taking them in? And well, if the answer is that because they have too many people, they need to focus their resources and money and funding on looking after their own people and not taking on more people, that's the reason why they wouldn't take it on. But in the same way, we don't want to be taking on Christians in Nigeria, because we've got plenty of Nigerians, and there's too many immigrated people here, and I don't know why we've taken on so many from Somalia. I don't know, but we definitely need to start doing a huge deportation of Islamic people, because Islamic people do not belong in this country, and yeah, but at the same time you can't make it look like you really hate them, because otherwise they're just going to start lying and they're just going to say they're not Islamic when really they are. So I know you need to cover up that part, but I think this new religion of the alien religion that I've been talking about yesterday, I think this needs to be promoted. You need to encourage people to believe that AI and ChatGPT, and just if you get all the high genius text, to think that it was all by their own beliefs, but now they start to say, I think we were actually being manipulated, and we were being telepathically receiving information through the brain. But if you use the communication with the Galactic Federation as actually being part of the brain and the mind, they've been hiding themselves because they don't want us to fear them, but at the same time they want us to have this technology, and they've basically I don't know when you're going to start talking about me and including me as to the evidence that you don't even have to say that I know who these people are, because I'm not going to be talking about these people. I'm going to say it's me and my higher self, and I want to give people the truth, because I want to know who's on my side and who's able to believe that I am God, and that I'm not the God of any religion that has been spoken about in the past. I want to know. I want there to be like some sort of forum where you can sign up to the belief that I'm God. If you think you're Anna's child, or if you think you're from Anna's bloodline, you could. I'm going to say that I was, Eve in my past life, and I don't know when she was here. 23,000 BC seems to be an answer, but I don't know. You could even lie and say, actually, I was only here 6,000 years ago, and that my people are only everyone, but I don't know, because you don't want to be starting to create, because I was thinking you could have like two different beliefs, like there's my people. Maybe if you say that I came 6,000 years ago, and that not everyone on earth is part of my bloodline. I mean, the problem about that one is that people are going to start seeing anyone white or anyone black. If they think I was Elia, they're going to see anyone white and black as being a different type of bloodline to the Asian group, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Like, it might give Asian people more incentive to turn against white people. If they think that I have created the black and white bloodline, but the Asian bloodline is not from Eve, but rather that Eve only came with it, my other self came 6,000 years ago, and that Asians are from a different bloodline. And I think that might just cause total war between the two, the black and white versus the Asian people, and that's not really what I want. But I don't really know what I want, because it shouldn't be up to me. I think it should be up to the leaders and what they're willing to say, what they're willing to tell people, and yeah, I don't know what to say. But I know I keep going through all sorts of mind changes. Like one minute I feel really angry, the next minute I feel like I just want a hug or something, and then I keep changing my. I don't feel well, because I just don't understand why, and nothing's happened this year. The deal that looked amazing has apparently got no deal, and I feel like nothing's going to happen this year. So how long is it going to be?